women. Yeah, so at CITE 2023, we launched that, right, and put that into publication, and then we've taken it on some road shows across key government functionaries and private sector actors in the last 1 year. So again, like I mentioned, our research was supported by Fund Foundation, and we presented it in 2023. And we highlighted critical aspects of the PIA's implementation impacting women and other vulnerable groups, right? And we identified the significant shortcomings of the PIA's execution, especially concerning gender inclusion. For those who have watched us actively, you will realize that we are sensitive to gender issues. We've done a lot of work. Our consulting and advocacy have done a lot of work around women. We launched Earth Women about 3-4 years ago, a documentary on the plight of women in indigenous communities and other underserved communities, right? So we've done a lot of work around that, and we are very upfront about our bias, right? So we noticed that there is substantial gender imbalance in leadership roles and lack of comprehensive needs assessment by oil and gas companies, and overall low awareness of the HCBT framework within communities. Yeah, so these issues are not merely oversight, but critical barriers. Again, they are not oversight, but they are actually barriers to achieving the inclusive and sustainable development that the PIA aims to deliver, right? So inherent in the PIA in itself is an aspiration, right, to be inclusive and to deliver sustainable development over time, right? So this is slightly significant, or this is significant in our opinion, right? So these concerns have been central to our advocacy efforts around the PIA since we launched the report. We recognize that all stakeholders, particularly businesses, are navigating new territories with this PIA. And the ability to do so effectively is key to the Act's successful implementation. So this is the basis for our seminar today, our webinar today, as part of a constructive engagement process, right? And that's why we have, very important stakeholders in the room today to do justice to this topic, right? So today's discussion will provide businesses and stakeholders in the oil and gas sector with the essential insight to successfully implement the PIA and ensure that the benefits of Nigeria's natural resources are shared more equitably and in a sustainable fashion, right? So at CSR-in-Action, we do, many people know us for the advocacy aspect of it, which was responsible, or which is responsible for the delivery of the research. But we also do a lot of, consulting for corporates, for government bodies and corporates alike, right? So today we have emerged as the foremost leader in sustainability consulting in Sub-Saharan Africa today. Our specialization is in guiding companies through the transition from the GMOU, that's the General Memorandum of Understanding frameworks, in the PIA and Host Community Development Trust. And we provide advice on crafting tailored sustainability strategies that enhance your performance, infusing ethical practices and developing responsible corporate character. All right. So over the last close to 15 years, we've done a lot of work with all the majors in Nigeria and the indigenous, oil and gas company as the only certified partner to the Global Reporting Initiative. Chief executive for about 3-4 years was on the board of the Global Reporting Initiative in Amsterdam, and was the first Black African to be so elected, right? And we've done a lot of work, developing other research materials, need assessments, community impact initiatives over the years in the oil and gas sector and beyond. So we are very proud of the work that our advocacy subsidiary has done with this research, and we're very happy, to have everybody on board here today. Thank you, Dr. Ubona Oji, for joining. I see a notification here that he's joined. Thank you very much, for the support you've given us over the years at NATI's level. We remember when we came, to you. I think you were Director of Communications then, to share the vision of what we wanted to do to transform the extractive industry as a whole in the country. And you, from day one, you have expressed your commitment and you have shown it consistently over the years. I can hear some feedback. Technical, please can you check that? I'm getting feedback on myself. Okay, it's fine now. So I extend my heartfelt appreciation, and I know I'm speaking for Bekeme Olula, Chief Executive as well, and everybody who has been a part of this, to appreciate everyone for coming. I'm not doing the vote of thanks yet, but, just setting the ball rolling in this preamble. Again, I want to emphasize appreciation to Ford Foundation. Our other partners are here as well. Access Bank, Global Rights, Steering Committee, other members of NATI, the Federal Ministry of Petroleum Resources, Federal Ministry of Mines and Steel Development, NNPCL now, NNPCL, and others for their unwavering support over the years. So I look forward personally to a productive dialogue that will pave the way for a more inclusive and impactful implementation of the PIA. Thank you very much, and good morning, everyone, or good afternoon, or good day, wherever you're joining us from. Over to you, Isaac. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Lola, and thank you very much for your remarks. I think it just feeds into the importance of our gathering this morning. And just as you were speaking, it just occurred to me that we are at this point at the end of the ladder, if I would say, and we have just a few years or maybe a few more decades to make the best of our oil wealth as a nation. And before oil, Nigeria was a much more peaceful place. I believe many people will agree. But post oil, we see something that is like a paradox. We feel like great wealth should have brought us great, liberty and prosperity. But we see that it's come with so many issues, and these are some of the issues that the PIA seeks to address. And in an age where the global focus now is on transitioning away from fossil fuels, we have a very short window to make the best of this. And I think that's a very good foundation to go into, speaking on the panel session. And to address that, I will just run through the profiles of our panelists who are here. And after doing so, I would invite each panelist to just give us about a minute or two of their thoughts on the PIA, just to speak generally before we delve into the panel session itself. I have been informed that the chat section has not been active because it needs to be enabled. I believe the technical team is on that, and it will be enabled very shortly. So I will be able to recognize people who are on board. Currently, I see that we have more participants joining, and we have people also following this live stream globally on Facebook and on YouTube, and we would come to that shortly. So without further ado, I will just go on to introduce our esteemed panelists this morning. And if you would pardon me, I would love to do a ladies first approach. So I will be introducing, firstly, we have Mrs. Eugenia Onyiruka. You would see a slide that shows her profile, and Miss Eugenia Onyiruka is the chairperson of the Board of Trustees for Asa North Host Community Development Trust in Imo State. And she brings on board decades of experience as a public servant, having risen to the peak of her career in the Nigerian Ports Authority, and then transitioning from that to serve her community as a chairperson of the board of trustees. And in her current role, she plays a very she holds a very strategic role that helps her interface with the needs of the community, the operations of the players in the sector, and just to balance it all and find sustainable development in the middle of that mix-up. And we have with us as well another esteemed panelist in person of Mrs. Glory Alexander Thomas. She joins us from Akwa Ibom State, and she sits as the secretary to the management committee of the Ibeno Host Community Development Trust. And she's over the years served in in very active roles in community development at the grassroots, also to uplift women. She's been very active in leading initiatives that uplift women in form of the Ala Uchi Women Development Initiative. And I believe that the presence of these two very distinguished women, highlights to us the importance of having grassroots voices when conversations like this are held. Also, it highlights to us the importance of mainstreaming the feminine gender into key decisions that are taken. And I was so inspired when I got to meet them that we have women who are taking the lead and not just doing so, but they are walking the talk as well. Also with us this morning, we have Mr. Dayo Kusami. Mr. Dayo Kusami, like I said earlier, he's partner at Templars, also the head of the Energy and Natural Resources practice. And he brings decades of experience, one of the top voices and authorities in the field as far as advising on energy and natural resources goes. And Mr. Okusami has been in on major transactions that have taken place in the ecosystem over the years, and he brings to the webinar this morning his expertise from that, also advising organizations on transitioning away from the GMOU model into the new PIA regime. He's been recognized by international directories such as the Legal 500, the Client's Guide, the world's leading law firms and lawyers, also the international who's who of oil and gas lawyers, and also he's also a partner of the Chamber's Global Guide. And this morning, we are delighted to have him with us and would be looking forward to taking opening remarks from him shortly. Next, I would love to introduce Mr. Kibambo Ibidakobe, whom I have mentioned earlier is the General Manager, Commercial for Wando Energy Resources. Recently got to hear about Wando's acquisition of Ajib, and very remarkable transaction taking place in the ecosystem just this year. And I believe that, for us, shows what to expect. Mr. Ibidakobe brings over 20 years of experience in the upstream and oil and gas segment of the energy industry. He has been an asset manager. He's also been able to provide his services within the Owando Group as head of technology and service delivery, and also as the executive assistant to the deputy group chief executive. Before joining, he was a part of the Argentil Capital, and he has also had on-site experience on the site working with Chevron Nigeria Limited. So he is also a member of the American Institute of Chemical Engineers and the Nigerian Society of Engineers. And we're so delighted to have you with us this morning, Mr. Ibidakobe. Last but not the least, we have with us Dr. Orji Ogbonaya Orji, who is the Executive Secretary of the Nigeria Extractive Industries Transparency Initiative. He comes to this webinar with decades of experience in the public sector, international development, communications, as well as implementation of global best practices within the Nigerian public sector. And he holds a master's degree and a PhD in political economy and international development from the University of Abuja. He's been an alumnus of the John F. Kennedy School of Government in Harvard University, in the University of Oxford, and institutes from various international organizations. He's currently leading NATI's new focus to link reports to revenue growth and data usage. And he currently serves as the chair of the Extractive Industries Transparency Initiative Global Contract Transparency Network. So it's such a delight to have with us Dr. Ogbonnaya Orji this morning. I believe that his name is not new to anyone who has been active in the ecosystem for some time. So I would love to ask Mr. Dayo Kusami to just for 1 to 2 minutes, just share your opening thoughts on the PIA generally and what your expectations are, on this very landmark piece of legislation that has been enacted in Nigeria.
Thank you, Isaac. Good morning, everyone. PIA, we're living and breathing it now. Generally, more so as lawyers, I'd like to frame things in the fact that we need to allow development of laws. No law is perfect. I've been practicing law 25 years now. And before the PIA of 2021, the last major legislation was almost 60 years old. It was imperfect. The PIA is, in my opinion, an improvement, but it needs time to be implemented properly and patience. What I've noticed in transactions I've been advising on and advisory transactions, so the divestments going on at our firm, we're advising on all of them in one capacity, but also in the transition, we're advising clients on host community issues, on environmental issues, and the regulators and the private sector are working, sometimes not at the same speed, to move the needle in the implementation. But we are seeing implementation. I am seeing it day to day, both on an advisory and transactional basis. So I'm happy to be here. I think we do need to discuss, focus, and concentrate on proper, realistic, and sustainable implementation. But if you ask me, there has been movement, maybe not as fast as what we want, but I remember saying that I may walk slowly, but I never stop walking. So that's my intro. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Kusami. I think that just says it puts it very succinctly. You may walk slowly, but you never stop walking. And it just speaks to the need for patience, especially with an industry as complicated as the oil and gas sector, and having this legislation, do a complete overhaul. And in that complete overhaul, we've seen government agencies merged, we've seen government agencies scrapped, and we've seen, even operators within the industry are still trying to find their feet. Just riding on that thought, I would want to ask Dr. Orji to please share with us what his thoughts are around the PIA. Thank you very much, Dr. Orji.
Well, good morning, ladies and gentlemen, and good morning to all our listeners and esteemed members of the panel. I'm honored to be here. First of all, is to thank our partners, CSR-in-Action. We've been working together for decades, almost a decade now, on all industry issues. So we're honored to partner with them and for this important topic. I think the PIA is a very fundamental development in the sector. And it was a product of recommendations from the Nigeria Extractive Industries Transparency Initiative, right from our first report in 2004 and 2005. We followed through and ensured that working with partners including the organizers of this forum, to ensure that the PIA became law after 18 years in the National Assembly. It's been a very long journey, but the PIA is here. But the next task is exactly what you're doing now. How will the public civic engagement, public debate shape implementation? That's the biggest challenge that we have now. There is no implementation strategy in place to guide PIA implementation. An attempt to bring one in place did not come to fruition. I served in the presidential committee set up by the last administration on implementation of PIA, and we never finished our job. By March, when politics set in 2023, so that job wasn't finished. And as far as I'm aware, there is no report. And our concern is that such a very important law that took a very, very long time for us to get to where we are now should be guided by a comprehensive implementation plan. None is existing at the moment. That is the challenge NITE has put forward before the civil society, who have the right framework to push that a committee be either disbanded, reconstituted, or refined, or retuned. Because before we wound it up, or we couldn't end, we had identified 103 regulations and 26 model contracts that should be in place and should be drafted and interrogated by multi-stakeholders approach, not by these individual organizations. But what is happening now is that these individual organizations are drafting the regulations to suit their own boundaries of implementation. So there are a number of issues that we think should be the focus now. One of them is, what is the implementation strategy for the PIA? Are the regulators actually in a right framework to guide, draft the regulations and implement them? How far have we gone with the NNPC divestments, share of investments as they transit from NNPC to NNPC Limited? There are a number of other issues which I think, as we progress with this discussion, if we have the opportunity, we could share thoughts with. Once again, it's my pleasure to be in your midst. I wasn't late. You gave me 10:30, and by the time I joined by 10:30, you were already in progress, which is very nice. You were faster than the time you gave me. So I could have apologized for joining late, but I don't think I came late because I joined exactly 10:30. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Dr. Oji. Thank you very much. You have really touched on very important issues. The fact that, yes, the PIA has pushed us into new territory, we're in new waters, and where we are currently, implementation is key, so that the balls does not just pass over our head and we find ourselves where we were before. And one of those who are at the forefront of of actually actioning the PIA in the business angle is the organizations. And that's where we have organizations like Wando. Mr. Kibambo Ibidakobe, please, can you just give us your remarks from the business angle, your thoughts around the PIA?
Thank you, Isaac, for the question. Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. I think I'll be remiss not to notice that when we had the introductions, you went ladies first, but when we're having the questions, you're going gentlemen first. Thanks so much. I have to go off of what Mr. Okusami and Dr. Oji have said. This PIA took about 18 years to enact. I'm sure Mr. Okusami will remember that we went through multiple versions of the PIB, including there was a time when it was actually broken up into separate bills, then re-amalgamated, if that's even a word. What that did to industry players was it created a lot of uncertainty. and that uncertainty stifled development in the industry. We had our production drop. We had a reduced investment in exploration and even production. So the PIA that we are living and breathing now since 2021 has reversed that. Now we have a clear direction. The regulations are being enacted slowly or developed and enacted slowly, but definitely we're moving forward in the right direction. The corporatization of the NNPC has happened. We have things like open access, the separation of upstream from midstream infrastructure, from downstream, the breaking up of the DPR into the NUPRC and then DPRA. All these are positive steps. And of course, the host community development trusts, which I really love because it sets a minimum. I think it's important that we realize this is a minimum level of investment that these companies, such as ourselves, must make into their host communities via the fund. In terms of CSR, prior to the PIA, it's existed in many forms, but the Host Community Development Trust is one that we're particularly proud of. And for us, especially at Rwanda, we've incorporated 14 and funded the Host Community Development Trust funds. The mechanism for the funding, and this speaks to what Mr. Okusami said earlier, it's not perfect. Even, and I'm not sure that any law is, even the Petroleum Act before it had its issues, which is what led to the PIA. But we're moving in the right direction, and as we begin to implement and actually see how things play out, then we can modify and perfect. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Bidapobe. I think you've actually really set the ball rolling to go on to the next person to introduce, but also because you've mentioned that right now we are at a tipping point and we see organizations proactively taking steps to implement the PIA, especially as it relates to community inclusion and of course community development, which is where we have Mrs. Eugenia Onyiruka coming, who is the Board of Trustees Chair for the HCDT for Asa North. Mrs. Eugenia, please could you give us your just your remarks around the PIA?
Good morning, everybody. Hello.
Good morning. Yes, we can hear you. It's
okay.
Very clear here.
Thank you very much. The PIA, if I might say, we just take over the office, but the little time I'm with them, we are with them, the issue is implementing. The law is already made, but implementation is the issue. We have a lot of things lined up that we have not been able to do. So the PIA means good to the community, but like I said, implementation is the problem. But by God's on our side and with the government, they can be able to really do what they put on. I think the community will enjoy the PIA law because during the GMOU, I think it was the settlers that put in the regulation together for them to work. But now, PIA has made it very easy for the community to enjoy what is in their end. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mrs. Onyeka, and I couldn't agree more with you. This has just echoed what I believe other panelists have mentioned. Implementation is the buzzword right now. So we're going to hold on to that buzzword, implementation, and we're going to listen to remarks, your thoughts around the PIA in brief. Mrs. Glory Alexander Thomas.
Good morning, everyone. Please, can you hear me?
Yes, I can.
All right. Yeah, for me, already. Okay, first of all, let me share someone that is here. Mr. At least I'm meeting you again for the second time. And every other person, the panelists that I'm seeing here today, wonderful people with profiles. It's a pleasure to be in this seminar and also to be a panelist. Now, looking at the PIA, like I say, everyone is about implementation. PIA, from the community. When you look at a lot of them are shying away from their corporate social responsibilities with the community. I think the PIA is, I always say when I want to break down this discussion with people, I'll say the PIA is a sort of doing business in your domain and coming to give you back the interest of what the president, what he has done over the years in your domain, and brought that straight away the social responsibilities of those companies operating. Basically, we are having and since nothing has been done, this happened last week, Friday, and today.
Thank you very much, Mrs. Thomas. I think we actually getting the reception at your end is not so clear. May I suggest that you turn off your video, which will help conserve bandwidth, and I believe that to hear you better, just so that we do not miss the very important points that.
All right. Okay, so like I was saying, the oil companies have come to our community, but their social corporate responsibility shouldn't be abandoned. It shouldn't be silent because that is being, shared into the community for development is not what they are supposed to share from. What I mean is this: the PIA has become a law, ignited, yes. Yes. With the community people. Give me this. Junior. All right, can I continue?
Yes, please.
All right. So implementation here is the key. Like the PIA, when it all started, it was like it's a new thing, let me say so, to the community people. When it was announced, everybody was excited, everybody was happy. Okay, development is coming to our community. There's going to be something done differently from how it used to be before now. But I want to tell you, as a secretary of the management committee, for now, we have not seen anything different from how it used to be before now, because the settlers in my community are the ones that are still in charge. They are still in control of so many things that is done. For instance, we have the needs assessment from my people. The needs assessment have been submitted and approved before even the accounts were stepping. But many a time when we want to implement some project from the needs assessment, the settlers we want to query and query and query. It's making implementation and also the project cited by the community people very, very slow. And this is not good for the community. And also we as the members of the community people are pointing fingers at us. And it's not good because we live in the community. Tomorrow, God forbid, a group of persons could just wake up and begin to threaten you because a member of the community. Please, the PIA has the law enacted, but implementation and also the upper hand of the settlers in the affairs of the community is a problem that we really need to talk about and look at it this morning. Yeah.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mrs. Thomas. I think you've actually raised very salient points, and everyone present can actually align with your energy, because that is one thing that the community voice brings. You're closer to the grassroots. You see the experiences people have. You see the needs, the demands. You see issues as they are from the grassroots, and that is one reason why we're very grateful to have your voice with us. Initially, we couldn't really hear some of the points you've made, but I believe that summing it up, we have a very clear idea of your thoughts about the PIA. So it's going to be a very interesting discussion. We've identified a buzzword that I want to put up in the air, and it's implementation. So not the lack of laws, but the lack of implementation. Before we go on to the questioning phase of the panel session, I would just want to recognize a couple of people who've joined us. We have Comrade Cynthia Bright. She's Executive Director, Boko Le Crow, Women Empowerment and Development Organization, Nigeria. My apologies, please, if I didn't pronounce it as I should. I will work harder to learn how to make all those pronunciations as they should come out. We have Liberty Amechi, who is the MD, Author Energy, joining us. We also have Dr. Kenneth Uzo, also joining us from Petralon Limited as CSR Manager. We have Dr. Bulus Pitkita, who's joining us from Africa Service. He's Organization Support Manager. And we also have others who are joining us from YouTube and also from Facebook. This live stream is being followed globally. And we also have some media houses present that I would recognize accordingly. And we have our partners with us, Ford Foundation. We want to recognize and appreciate them for coming. So without further ado, I will just delve straight into it. The PIA has changed the shape of business governance, and that has come to stay. And right now, businesses, stakeholders are looking to reprioritize. So this question goes to Mr. Okusami. What do you think are the changes that stakeholders should be on the lookout for, and how would you advise them to prioritize addressing these changes that the PIA has brought in?
Hi. Okay, sorry. It took a while. First of all, pardon me, 20 seconds. I just turned on my coffee machine, so that'll be the background. Thank you for the question. So I'd like to break down things into a couple of buckets, right? First, regulatory. We do have a situation where we have dual regulators, right? I hear a lot of people, for lack of a better description, complain about this. There is precedence for this in Canada, Malaysia, and Mexico, where you have a dual regulatory structure. As you know now, we have the upstream and the midstream and downstream. The issue, like we talked about with implementation, is the coordination between the regulators. We do see there's some friction happening, but we're also seeing an attempt to ease over that friction. So one of the primary concerns I am having from my clients over the last 3 years is dealing with this friction. Without getting too detailed, one of the things that we've had to deal with is what we call in the industry the segregation. The PIA requires a segregation of businesses between upstream, midstream, and downstream. And you do have a number of companies that have operations in all of them. And the idea of, simplistically, where do you put the scissors to cut between these sectors? Because you have to spin them all off into different companies, okay? That's a major thing that is a concern that we're dealing with now. HSC obligations, for me, is one of the major things and the major improvements that one of my panelists has discussed, but I would like to dig in a little deeper. Let's talk from the host community. I think we already have moved where you have panelists who are chairing and secretaries of their host community development trust. Okay, we still have to get to the point where they're fully operational and fully funded, but I could tell you from an advisor's point of view that as far back as 2 years ago, my clients were already taking advice on host community trust funds, how to contribute to them, how to support them. And while from the host community perspective, we aren't quite there yet, but there is a seriousness from a number of my clients, both Nigerian and international, in supporting this in a proactive and actual way. Okay. One of the key things that we will need from the host community, because we often hear, well, the oil companies are not doing this, the oil companies are not doing that. Okay, we have to hold them accountable, but we also have to hold the host community trust accountable as well. How is the money being deployed? How is it being used? Because one of the concerns is, how is this money being managed? Is it going to do what is meant to be done? I think I always tell my lawyers here in the firm, no good deed goes unpunished. You work hard, you do well. What does that result in? Less work? No, you get more work done. So there's a responsibility on the IOCs and the indigenous companies like Oando. Sorry, Bambo, I'm putting you on the spot, but you're going to have to give the host community some money, give them a lot. But Bambo also has the right to ask these host communities, what have you done with the $5 million I gave you last year? I want to see it. Do you understand? That makes it easier for him to go back to his management and say, let's do more, right? We are seeing what we call the DNA, decommissioning and abandonment obligations. This is fairly public knowledge. Oando just completed the first deal in this round of divestments, right? I'm advising on a number of them, but Bambo could also tell you, again, not to put him on the spot, but I believe it helps in talking about these things practically. So he's the only company here. Don't worry, he and I are friends offline. But the DNA obligations for Oando to complete that deal and every other divestment that is going through now, you have to make a provision that goes into an account to be able to take care of the environmental change that has occurred due to oil exploration and production, right? There is an environmental remediation fund, which was not the case before the PIA, which is also being funded, which is used to manage the negative impact on the environment. So if you look from a host community and an environmental, which I, as a Nigerian, forget that most of my clients are international, the environmental impact of oil and gas production in Nigeria is significantly more adverse than you would find in other climes. The PIA is addressing that, and the companies are being held accountable for that. Yes, everyone is talking about divestment and acquisition, but no party that is divesting will be able to complete their deal without putting a significant amount of money aside in cash or a bank instrument that guarantees that at the end of cycle, we will be able to remediate, at least try significantly, the environmental damage that has been done due to these upstream activities. Another thing, just so I don't talk too long, is we're also seeing this from, and Bambo touched upon that, right? In 3 years, the NUPRC and the NDPMRA, I'll just call them the Commission for Upstream and the Authority for Midstream and Downstream, have issued a number of regulations, right? It is due to the implementation of the PIA, but also stakeholder feedback as well. Myself and colleagues in this firm, in other firms, companies like Oando, Total, Chevron, they're often stakeholder engagements with the regulators before they issue this. But more important, and let's be fair to the regulators. Sometimes they don't always get it 100% right. I tell people every jurisdiction you go to, from the US to Russia to Venezuela, there are always concerns with a law. It's not only Nigeria. One thing I do like under this current PIA regime is that if a regulation is issued, you go back to the regulator saying, hey, guys, have you thought about it this way? Or this is how we're seeing the practical impact of what you've issued as a guideline or regulation. They're open to listen. It doesn't mean they always agree with us, but we have seen a number of scenarios. I personally have seen on a number of transactions, or just even in advisory work, a willingness to listen and sometimes change things just to make the implementation more practical. So these are the things I'm seeing. I'll stop now and give way to my other panelists. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Okusami. Thank you so much. I think you have really touched on these issues, and it just emphasizes the mighty importance of this. The very fact that we're seeing companies being, to say, for want of a better word, at the crossroads or between two extremes. I won't say the devil and the deep blue sea, but companies have to cater to regulators and regulations. Companies have to cater to community needs, and companies also have to ensure that they are sustainable and profitable for the long term. So they're having to deal with all of this, and then you have the PIA coming, and the PIA says we're changing the game, and everything will be different. It won't be as business as usual anymore. So, Mr. Bidapobe, I'll just come to you. I think it's a good time to just ask, what are the specific steps that your company, Oando, has taken? And I'm asking this question because we have participants joining us from across the sector, also other companies in the sector. We want to just listen to what are the specific steps you've taken to ensure compliance with the PIA. How have you been able to manage that repositioning to fit with the PIA? Are there any key learnings that you've gotten from the process? Some areas you're looking to see more improvement. Some areas you've been able to manage very well. We would really love to hear about that.
Thank you. Thank you, Isaac, for the question. I actually think Dayo has answered all my questions for me, but I'll try and repeat or use other language. The PIA, it took a long time. I know I said that before, but there are real life implications. Over the 18 years of the multiple iterations of the PIB, there were stakeholder consultations. There was input from all the stakeholders into what finally became the PIA. No law is perfect, but I believe the fact that we were able to pass this law was removed a lot of uncertainty and allows us to move forward in the spirit of continuous improvement. So what are we doing? We at Oando just closed a transaction on the acquisition of Nigerian Ajib Oil Company. Before we could get that ministerial consent, as stated in the law, there were compliance with PIA specifics that you had to meet. Things such as Dayo said earlier, the environmental remediation fund, you had to ensure that that was funded, the decommissioning and liabilities, and even the host community development fund. You had to have incorporated all the funds and also funded it. So not complying with the PIA is really not an option. It's very clear. And in many ways, it's a lot better than the Petroleum Act, because by definition, it was meant to be an incremental improvement on what existed prior. I think what's more important for me is, what are we at Oando doing? How are we taking advantage of the PIA today to not only improve our operations, but also improve the lives of Nigerians? The difference, Dayo mentioned that we're the first to close what a lot of people are calling the indigenization of the Nigerian upstream oil and gas sector, specifically to onshore, swamp, and maybe shallow water. What the PIA is allowing us to do is it's allowing indigenous players to take the lead. Where Nigeria has been producing oil and gas for many decades. And the expertise is to get this done is all in Nigeria. What we haven't had is a lot of Nigerian companies in a leadership position. So when you talk about host community development trusts and CSR, your environment, decommissioning and liabilities, it's a bit different for an indigenous company. You know, it's my environment. I'm not, so when you tell me I have to return the environment to the manner it was before I started operations, before I leave, for Anuando, there's no leaving. This is where we're from. So we're going to stay here. So we have a personal stake in ensuring that our environment is returned to the best possible condition it is. I'll tell a quick story and then I'll allow other people to contribute to this. In 2009, Oando began production from a marginal field in OML 56 called the Abendo field. At the time, there was no PIA, there was no PIA, there was a PIB, but PIA had not been enacted. We thought about what was happening in the industry at the time with community disturbances and unrest, as we call it in the industry. And how can we take a novel approach to resolving the situation? What we did was, rather than, you know, do the normal thing, needs assessment, build a school, build a road, we created a trust fund composed of the community, the state government, the local government, and us, the operator and non-operator, the joint venture that was producing all that. And that trust fund got a percentage of the profits from the marginal field production. Together as a trust, we decided every year what projects that we would carry out. And there were things like scholarships, sending people abroad, sending people to do training in other things, not necessarily in the community. And we had, between 2009 and today, we're still producing. We've had zero disturbances in that area. And over time, as the PIB was becoming the PIA, this is something that we were able to bring into our stakeholder sessions. We lobbied for it. And we like to believe that that is what became the Host Community Development Fund. I say that to say, indigenous companies taking a leadership position as a group and also contributing to how the PIA is implemented and improved over time is critical for the development of not only the Niger Delta and the resources and the people therein, but also the entire country. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Bidapobe. As you were speaking, a couple of thoughts were just running through my mind, and very, very insightful case study that you shared about how forward-thinking the organization was in looking ahead, and essentially just boils down to ownership, and a sense of responsibility. And these are things that you have highlighted. I do believe that there is more that all who are joining us would want to learn about the PIA, and we would come to that very shortly. I would just want to go and just recognize a few more people who have joined us since the conversations began. We have Dr. Enahoro Michael from Excellent World Foundation, Benin City. We have Kazim Lamid, who's joining us from the Native Secretariat. We have Olaide Adesonya from New Nigeria Foundation. Of course, we have very large presence from civil society. We have Abasiama Mohata joining us from Shoreline Natural Resources. We also have Kazim Koleosho, who is joining us from Oriental Energy Resources. He is Head External Affairs. We have Aniwura Omalayo. We have Professor Ayoade. He's joining us from the University of Lagos and University of Dundee as well. We also have Caleb Peters, Esquire. He's joining us from Boba Adeoluwafemi and Co. I just wanted to just touch on some of the people that have joined in, just to show how robust the audience is and how really important these conversations we're having are to not just the sector, but the future of Nigeria as a nation. And one thing, people, globally, when you bring out the green passport and you bring out the blue passport, there's a way they look at the people that hold the green passports. But we want to see things begin to change. And one of those agencies that have been at the fore of trying to ensure that corruption is addressed and we see better transparency is NATI. And NATI, like Dr. Oji had mentioned, played a very strategic role in the emergence of what we now know today as the PIA. So there are concerns around transparency, there are concerns around holding the parties accountable, from the government institutions to the companies, the IOCs, and ensuring that under the PIA regime, we have transparency as the buzzword, and we are able to see implementation that mirrors transparency. So we're putting another buzzword into the air. The first was implementation, and now we are saying transparency. So I'll just call on Dr. Oji to please just speak to his thoughts on the role NATI is playing just to ensure that under this new PIA regime, we're seeing increased transparency, we're seeing responsibility from government regulators, we're seeing responsiveness and proactiveness from the companies, the communities are managing the resources that comes to them equitably, and we have a very sustainable, forward-thinking way of doing things. So, Dr. Oji, sir.
Thank you very much. And once again, I would like to thank my other colleagues on the panel for the insightful inputs that have helped to shape our discussion. While we leverage on the fact that the PIA has been passed or is now law, NATI's decision to recommend the PIA was as a result of our findings that before the law PIA came in on the 21st of August 2021, the only law existing in the oil and gas industry was the Petroleum Act of 1959, which was a year before Nigerian independence. Every other thing you see guiding operations of the industry were, from the government side, were based on decrees, regulations, laws, guidelines, and directives, not anchored on a contemporary law. So the PIA sought to put that to an end. It took us a long time, like my other colleagues have highlighted, but on August 2021, the PIA came to be, created two institutions, which were already aware, the NMDPRA and the UPRC, and then also sought to separate powers of these bodies on how they do their job. But the most important outstanding component of the PIA was the creation of a fiscal regime that determines rates, who gets what and how, between the companies and the government take in terms of goods produced, exported, or consumed in country. And the introduction of these very key fundamental changes distorted the way and manner, obstructed the way and manner the industry was being operated. And there were also governance and accountability measures put in place for the host communities that many of my colleagues have spoken. There were also a lot of sanctions and penalty restrictions that were put in place. So the highlights of the PIA were based on the experiences that we have gained in the industry. Now, NATI's specific role in all of this is on the provision of information and data, public disclosure, provision of information and data in the public domain. In my opening remarks, I did say that based on this, 9 agencies were set up, 9 member committees were set up by the last administration. NATI served on that committee, NNPC, FRS, Ministry of Finance, Attorney General's of the Federation's office. It was chaired by the then Minister of Petroleum, Minister of State for Petroleum. But like I said, in that committee, we identified 103 regulations, because after the law, lawyers will, agree that after a law, you now need to put regulations that will identify specific issues to be handled. And we identified 103 regulations, and 83 of them, as at the time we wounded up, were already the ones we agreed.
Okay. I think that there's a little network glitch from Dr. Orji's end, which will be resolved very shortly. Apologies about that. While we wait for Dr. Orji to join us, I will just continue to recognize a couple of other people who have joined us in the course of the webinar. We have Dr. Uwem Ite. He's the head community relations for Oriental Energy Resources. He's an alumni. He's a multiple-time alumni of CSR-in-Action CT conferences, and it's such a delight to have Dr. Uwem Ite with us. We also have Faith Emire joining us from Axela. We have Oluwatimilehin Lori from Advocate Law Practice, Funke Sunday, who is joining us from DBN Energies, Taufik Akimbo joining us from the Nigerian Law School, Yenagoa Campus, and we have a number of others who have joined us. While we await Dr. Orji to come back, I should also remind us that we will have the opportunities to ask questions when we get to the Q&A session. And I do believe that we already have questions loaded, so we'll try to make as much time as we can for that. I should also say that we have an ongoing promo to just encourage engagement, and my other colleagues are on the lookout to see who is engaging the most, making the most comments, and just following the trend of discussions. And of course, that person needs to be following us on social media, and the person who has the top ranking will be eligible to receive a lunch voucher on partner of CSR-in-Action. So, but then I believe that very important conversations are already taking place, and we're seeing these things happen real time. Dr. Orji, just before he went off, was speaking to the groundwork that went into the PIA as we know it today, and the fact that those who have done this groundwork were looking to as much as possible entrench transparency in the sector, deepen participation and inclusion. And of course, recommendations were made in line with that. So I will just move on and ask this question to Mrs. Eugenia Onyeruka. So we see that, of course, the companies have spoken, and from the legal angle we've heard, we want to hear what the community voice is on these issues. And I believe one of the greatest challenges that communities face, especially extractive communities, is how to ensure inclusion, how to ensure that they get the benefits of course, the resources that are being taken out of their land. And I would just ask Mrs. Eugenia to please just speak to what your experience has been, and what the greatest challenges you faced under the new PIA regime have been in terms of inclusion and ensuring that community development is sustainable.
Thank you very much. The changing the old order, making people embrace a change is very difficult. Hello, are you with me?
Yes, very much.
Yeah. We try to bring everyone close, including those who we are not favorably disposed to our nomination at the crèche. Now that everybody is together, trying to make them see things transparently in one way was the biggest challenge, considering the way we came in. Like when I was saying that implementation is challenge, as I'm speaking to you now, it was only the board of trustees that they have inaugurated. My 2 legs have not stand. And as much, we have not started doing anything. That's why it looks as if I don't have much to say about the whole thing. The reason being that some communities are having some issue in a selection process. But before now, we have finished that, which we're supposed to have made the settler to inaugurate the 2 legs that are still standing. That's, I mean, my MC and ACs. They have not been inaugurated. So we have not started work. But meanwhile, we are trying our best. Like there is some, what the settler called signature project. Those one is what they promised to do for the host community. Immediately we came in, we make them to start off some of them, which they have started the hospital, which they promised the community. And some of the things they promised to do. But my problem now, as I'm speaking, is the BOT has not started work fully because of not inaugurating my MC and NC. And we have done everything humanly possible for them to inaugurate those 2 legs. And till this moment, that has not been achieved. That's why I was saying that the law has been made, but the implication is the issue. Implementation, I mean to say, is the issue. Yes. We are working towards doing that. We have written them for them to give us, though it is the BOT who's supposed to do the inauguration of the MC. But we have to get the clearance from the SPDs, being our settler. So that's the issue we are facing now. But meanwhile, really, the PIA has changed a lot, including how women are related in communities affairs. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much, Mrs. Onyiruka. And, as Mrs. Onyiruka was speaking, it just occurred to me that we are hearing from the grassroots, we are hearing from the ground now. We are seeing that, and this really relates to the research we had conducted, because we discovered that awareness for the HCTs, generally speaking, was very low. Okay, we have Dr. Orji back with us. I would call Dr. Orji to continue shortly. So we had said that awareness for the HCTs was very low. And right now we see that even in the implementation, which is a word that has been in the air right from the time this webinar began, that for the substantive committees that should be in place, there's still a challenge getting those committees operational. And of course, with that challenge, it's going to affect the ability of these communities to enjoy the benefits they ought to enjoy, as well as the various stakeholders to dispense the benefits to the communities. So these are some of the issues that we're seeking to bring to light. And I will just call on Dr. Orji to continue his line of thoughts. Apologies, Dr. Sir, we lost you for a moment.
Well, thank you very much. I hope, are you hearing me now? Are you hearing me? Are you hearing me?
Yes, we are, Doctor. You can go ahead. Thank you.
Oh, thank you very much. Well,
yes,
yes, and I apologize once again. Thank you very much. I was explaining that the issue at stake was our concern is the fact that the PIA, as was passed, is now being implemented agency by agency, agency by agency. There is no coordinated, comprehensive implementation strategy to guide implementation. It's a major concern for us because a stakeholders-driven coordinated implementation strategy is key. Because when agencies and various institutions begin to implement the PIA the way and manner they understand it, we will most likely lose track, because none of the agencies would like to push the boundaries of transparency and accountability that will not affect their reforms and the way and manner they were doing things in the past. So the hard decisions can be better taken at a combination of civil society, the companies, and the government sitting together as a round table, as we had envisaged with the implementation plan, because the implementation plan was supposed to be sold to the larger civil society, sold to the media, sold to all Nigerians in a focus group stakeholders engagement to agree on the rules and regulations that would have been drafted and an implementation finalized and launched to guide implementation. That has not been in place, and it's a major concern for us. That's one area that we're pushing, and we have placed a request before the new administration to say, if there is anything that we need urgently, it is for that committee to come back to work. You can rejig, dissolve, but has to reconstitute such a committee to produce an implementation plan for the PIA. There's the second role that NAITI is pushing is on the use of data, information and data. And to that extent, we just completed a data center, the first in the industry, that will be able to document all the information and data, produce all the information and data contained in all our reports for access to all stakeholders, including a forum like this, so that with information and data, you can make the right policies and decisions. So our value addition to this ongoing discussion is on the provision of accurate information and data. And mind you, in the PIA, companies will be concerned about how the law affects them and how they can manage the law in terms of their interests and divergent concerns. The government on its own is concerned about how the law can improve their own government take and put more money on their table to use. NAITI's major concern, representing working with the civil society, is on transparency and accountability and how things can change within the framework of the law. Those are our major concerns. And we're not alone. We're working with development partners. We're working with civil society organizations. We're working with the media. So even when we sat on that presidential committee, all our major concern and interest was how the regulations and the plans we were planning, we were strictly on the scale of transparency and accountability. For now, approved and implemented them, NMDPRA, and the divestment and share of assets between the former NMPC and the NMPC Limited is now being handled by NMPC. It's not supposed, was not the way the PIA envisaged it. It was supposed to be brought before a multi-stakeholders group to look at these issues. So in a webinar like this, it would be very nice to lend a voice for this implementation plan to be in place. We have not gone too far, but if we continue to implement the PIA without a strategic plan, it might take us back to where we're coming from. For the host community fund, we were also very vocal that the host community fund should not be managed the way we have managed other interventions in the Niger Delta, like NDDC, like the UNPADEC, and several other interventions that have yielded little or no dividend. Because when you travel to the Niger Delta, as I do often, you will not see any significant improvement in the life of the host communities, in spite of the enormous funds that are accrued to them from 13% derivation, from NDDC, from all the past interventions, including the ministry that have been created. So the host community fund was supposed to bring these opportunities closer to the communities where this oil and gas are actually being produced. But if we do not monitor this closely, it could also be hijacked by the elites. That's our major fear. So NITI is concerned that an implementation plan tracked strictly with sanctions and incentives should be put in place. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Dr. Orji. Thank you very much for sharing your thoughts with us. I believe so many people here would be in agreement with the fact that implementation is key. And that's a buzzword that has been right from the start of the webinar. I caught a chat by one of the participants who said that it's not for a lack of laws, it's for the implementation of those laws. And we see that reflected in the experience shared by Mrs. Onyiruka. Some of the arms for the HCDTs that should be operational in communities are not yet operational. And because we have that challenge, it of course will impact the implementation of the PIA as it concerns them, which is benefits for community development and the likes. So these thoughts, these considerations, these concerns, sometimes when you begin to look at it, there would be the possibility of having a kind of clash of interests, which Dr. Orji has alluded to. Also the need for these stakeholders to then come together and work together. So he said that we should have an all-inclusive stakeholder-driven implementation plan. And that would be key for us, to us moving beyond where we are right now with the PIA. Mr. Kusomi had alluded to the fact that it's slow, but we just need some patience. We also need action in line with that. And it just brings me to Ms. Glory Alexander Thomas, who is joining us from Ibino. Ibino now has his MC working, and I believe you are the secretary to the MC for the HCDT at Ibino. So my question is, how do you keep the peace? There is expectation from the community. There is a standard from the companies. The regulators also have their concerns, and you also sit at the nexus of all of those interests. So how do you keep the peace and build trust? Because essentially, at the end of the day, it has to be an amicable relationship, even with the IOCs, the stakeholders that would provide the funds for your community to develop. There has to be an amicable relationship. Everyone should feel respected and mutually included in whatever is done. So how do you build the trust? How do you keep the peace with these stakeholders? Mrs. Alexander.
All right, thank you. Thank you very much. Please, can you hear me? Can you
yes,
hear
I
me?
can. Yes, I can. Please go ahead.
All right. For me, the host community project is to be implemented in the community and not outside the community. Now, one of the things that we were able to do was to bring in the security apparatus that is around Ibano community. What I mean is we brought in the Nigerian police force and the local police that have been trained by the police force and the vigilantes. We brought them together to ensure that there is peace in the community, especially when we are doing sensitization meetings, town hall meetings. They come around and there is always peace and order. Now, peace remains, and the people enjoy the benefits of the funds that have been released to the community. We make sure that we engage the local contractors to execute most of the projects. We don't import people outside to do the project. Rather, we engage the local contractors. They are the ones that carries out most of the projects that we have started already in Ibano, like the scholarship project and also the recent job that was written. It was a local contractor that was engaged to do that, and it was successful. And we went further to also do what is the bursary. The bursary is already ongoing. How did that happened without any inches around the community is because we were able to engage the local contractor to do that. The local contractor gathers their information and brought to the office. We go through it and we make sure that everything is captured appropriately, especially their NIN and their phone numbers and their names. And investigations were also carried out, through the schools where they attend, and it was successful. Though it's still ongoing right now. The bursary exercise is ongoing, but so far we have done more than 150% already. And now we had also done the first project that was executed by our trust was the free medical missions that was carried out, and it was fantastic. Though the process of settling the contractor was not easy by the settlers. For me, I think somehow, you see, when things like this happen in other way around, it is very, very good because it helps to control and manage the funds that is being released to the community. Before now, there are other projects and other agencies and other things that has happened in the community, especially in the Niger Delta and the names of as an instance of interventions. But at the end of the day, you only hear it happening in papers and not in realities. They are not on ground. They are not really there. So sometimes when you see some of those agitations from the community people, it is because of their experiences, their encounters in the time past. I remember there was a time that money was released from our settlers to do a palliative. The palliative was to aid the sufferings of the community people, the village head, and all of that. But somehow a project came up without proper consultation, without due diligence, and we saw this project, and today the project has been abandoned. That has been some of the fears in the heart of the community people when the PIA thing surfaced. It was fearing to them. It's like, please, let's share this money because we know nothing is going to come out of it. But as we speak, even our host community that is being funded by ExxonMobil, they have gone past, this stage of fear because we have put up some signature project that is not just in papers, but is running. Let me also tell you this, that one of the things that we were able to do to maintain this, even of the host community funds, is bringing other groups together. Especially the youth and the women group was not left out, not just because these are also key stakeholders. The people living with disabilities, we are also cropped in, and they are also giving key positions. They are also giving contract to execute in the community. You see, nobody is left out. Everybody is being carried along. Everybody is engaged. Everybody is working, and we are all watching to see that truly PIA, the funds that have been released, should be executed to do living projects and not booking projects. What do I mean by booking projects? Projects that you only read in books and it's not on ground. So these are the few things we are able to do to put together in Ibono community. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mrs. Thomas. Very passionate representation of your community. And I'd love to believe that if people from Ibono are joining, they would be very proud that you have really done justice to advocating for their cause. And right here, we see two extreme, or we see two sides of the matter, if I may say. We see the experience shared by Mrs. Onyiruka about the fact that the arms, she called them her two legs, the arms of the HCDTs that should be operational to deliver these dividends of the resources to the people are not there yet. And because of that, it had to settle for some marginal things here and there. But on the other hand, here we see Mrs. Thomas sharing on-the-ground experience of the MC, that's the management committee of the HCDT. It's operational. And through that, they've been able to ferry development to the community. They've been able to broaden consultation. They've been able to deepen inclusion for the the community members. And I just think that is really, really very interesting. And we just want to appreciate Mrs. Thomas for sharing that. And I should say we have so many companies here, and the way you do relate with your HCDT would eventually show when they get the opportunities to speak on platforms like this. And it's truly been a very wonderful experience. Thank you very much. So right now we'll be going into the question and answer session. I would ask that please let's make use of the Q&A box. We have a Q&A box on the screen for questions and answers. I would advise that you make your question rather, as direct as possible. You can include your name and your organization, perhaps to provide more context. And you can also say to whom you are directing your question. So please, let's begin to have questions going to the Q&A box. I know we have observed some questions in the chat section, but I would really love that they are redirected to the Q&A box so that even panelists can proactively look at them and then see questions that have been directed to them. But before we move on, I would want to just acknowledge the presence of some of our media partners in the house. Channels TV, our media partner for many years running for the Sustainating the Extractive Industries initiative that we run. We also have The Nation here present this day, our friends at Arise TV, Guardian, Business Day, The Sun, Leadership, Independent as well. The Independent newspaper is here too. And just to speak to the media coverage of the conversations that are happening right here. I also see that we have a couple of people who have joined in since the last time I made that, just took the roll call. Please pardon me, I may not be able to call everyone who has joined in. Obviously, we have people on YouTube and Facebook who are following. I can see we have engineer Uche Opala from Axela who's joined us. And I can also see that we have also others who have joined in. Please pardon that I am not able to, at the moment, get the names of everyone. We have Ebitami Adekunle, we have Bolanle Ajibade, we have Bolanle Akinle Yopara as well joining us. We have Ade Damola joining us as well. And we also have Great Moldudi joining us from Pinnacle Oil and Gas. Thank you very much for joining. I believe questions have started going into the Q&A box. So I'm going to check them and I'll begin to pull out questions and of course ask the panelists the questions that are going in there. Okay, so one of the questions I believe, okay, Mr. Okusami.
Yeah, I just thought in the interest of time, one of the questions was regarding, and I'm sure anyone else can, but I just figured it was more of a legal point. One of the questions was, how is the royalty by price calculated? So I'll answer that question, but give it a framing. Royalties are payable on a combination of location, production, and pricing, okay? So what that means is that depending on where your asset is, you'll pay a percentage as royalty to the federal government, because the question came about how do we calculate it and where does it go? So if you're onshore, it's 15%, not about. Shallow water up onto 200 meters is 12.5%. Deep offshore, which is defined as 200 meters or greater, is 7.5%. And frontier basins, frontier will be like the Chad Basin and areas designated as a frontier basin is 7.5%. Now, for deep offshore fields with production of more than 50,000 barrels a day, the rate will be 5%. And you basically have it as a combination of the quantum and the location. Now, to the specific question that was asked, this this person asked, I don't know if it was deliberate or not, which is why I went wider, is royalty by price, right? So what happens is the royalty it's a dual calculation that is based on what I just spoke on, production and location, and now price. And it's on a sliding scale depending on the price of crude oil on the international markets. So the royalty, if it's below $50 a barrel, is 0%. Between 50 and 100 is 5%. And above $150 per barrel, it is 10%. Okay. Now, there's also a qualification that if it's between and above certain amounts, they'll use what they call a linear extrapolation or interpolation, which just means that it's a combination of factors that would allow you almost just simply put a sliding scale. So in the scenario, which is what I wanted to address, that crude oil was below $50 per barrel, it means that it would be zero royalty on pricing, but based on location, you would still, and production, you would still pay a royalty that would be dependent on where your asset is. If it were above $50 a barrel, based on those numbers I've given, you will pay a royalty based on pricing plus the location and or production. What happens is royalty is paid to the government by what we call royalty oil or royalty gas, which basically means the equivalent of that is allocated to the government. They sell it, it goes to the Federation account, and is distributed accordingly. The last part of that question was, how do we determine, or how do you check that? Well, that's part of, I believe, the good job that the Dr. Orji's organization is doing in offering that transparency. But the simple question is, it'll be hard, but if you had the right information, you would need to know what the production is, what the pricing is, and you'd be able to calculate that, and that is what is supposed to be remitted. This is supposed to be publicly available information. There are also reporting obligations to the NIETI, which Dr. Orji heads, and they double check that and make that information public or as per request. So that is the short, long answer to the question that I saw regarding royalty rates. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Kusami. I'll just go on to the next question, and this is addressed to, it's also addressed to you, but I'll allow Dr. Orji speak to this. But while Dr. Orji speaks to this next question, I'll just merge it with the third one, and it's around what are the top 3 governance problems implicit in the PIA, and also the issue of the 3% OPEX for HCDT, as well as 3%. Yes, Doctor, sir.
Can you please repeat the question? I didn't get that clearly.
Okay. So the first question is, in your view, what are the top 3 governance problems? Okay, so please, may I ask that if you are not speaking, please just...
Well, we're having some network problems. It's not too clear.
Okay. All right. So how is the reception now, sir?
Can you repeat the question? Sorry.
Okay. So the questions are also available, Dr. Orji, in the Q&A box, but I will repeat it again. So in your view, what are the top 3 governance problems implicit in the PIA? And then another person wants to know if the case of 3% budget, annual budget for NDDC, and 3% prior year OPEX for the HCDT doesn't amount to a double taxation, and what your thoughts are around addressing that. Dr. Orji, are you with us? All right then. So I'm just going to allow Dr. Orji to come back to us on that question. We have another question that has to do with the PIA punishing communities and stippling their HCDT fund in the event of sabotage of petroleum facilities in their area. That does this not seem to criminalize the communities as the ones responsible for sabotage even before investigation? And isn't it troubling that as the law seems to impose the responsibility of securing the oil facilities on communities, all companies, it imposes the responsibility of securing oil facilities on communities instead of on oil companies and security agents? That's a very, very important observation from Dr. Egbon. He's joining us from Essex Business School, UK. I will just tap on Mr. Dayo Okusami to speak to this briefly, and then I may also call on Mr. Lola to address one or two of the questions as we begin to round up.
Thank you for that. I'll answer two at once. One were the governance issues. I think one major governance issue goes to clarity between the regulators. Dr. Oji talked on an important point that, to be honest, I hadn't fully considered, but hearing him speak, I think is a very important point, because sometimes when you're advising on these things, you get stuck in the weeds. The lack of a coordinated implementation roadmap and/or committee. We're all kind of trying to work together, but there is no formal standing committee organization that has an agreed roadmap for implementation. So we're kind of ad hoc in it. I think that's the major governance problem, because if we had that, then you'd have the authority and the commission dealing with things jointly, hashing it out before it comes into public, having things like the president have to intervene, and this bit of turf war would be, I think, if we had that, that would be a major issue. Quickly again, because Dr. Oji is back on now, I will say, Dr. Egbon, I see your point. I don't think, in my opinion, I don't think it criminalizes the community. It places a responsibility on the community, because I see your point regarding the security agencies. That's their job. The oil companies, if they have to provide security in every community, that is going to drive up the cost of producing oil in that community and in Nigeria. I saw a breakdown of the price of production of oil across different jurisdictions. Roughly speaking, Nigeria is $48 per barrel. It's the highest in the world. By comparison, in Saudi Arabia, it's about $10, so almost 20%. In Russia, it goes up to between 10 and 20. In Venezuela, between 10 and 20. So we all also have to have a realistic expectation of this. If the host community is getting money to develop the community, right, one could argue it's not their job to secure, but it's in their backyard, right? So there needs to be, it's almost like a neighborhood watch, right? They have to watch the infrastructure that is enabling the development of their community. So I don't quite agree that it criminalizes them, but I could be in a minority. I'll turn over to Dr. Oji. Thank you. And thank you for the questions.
Thank you very much, Mr. Okusami. Okay, yes, Dr. Oji, please go ahead.
Isaac, please, can you repeat the questions? We're battling with some challenges of connection.
All right, definitely. So the first question, which Mr. Okusami just spoke to as well, is, in your view, what are the top 3 governance problems implicit in the PIA? That's number 1. Then number 2, there was the issue of the 3% annual budget for NDDC and 3% of prior year OPEX for HCDT. And the person asking the question was concerned that doesn't this raise the issue of double taxation? And, we just wanted to know what your thoughts are around, possibly repealing the NDDC and just allowing the HCDT to take preeminence.
Yeah. Well, the top issues that I mentioned earlier still stand for the PIA. One is on the one that is on having in place a comprehensive implementation strategy with stakeholders' inputs, companies, civil society, government agreeing that this is the way to go, and then chart a new course. The other issue that we consider also very urgent, is important, is for clarity on the divestments and share of assets of the NNPC. The NNPC, moving from the way it is to a limited liability company is a huge challenge. It's a huge challenge. And from the meetings that we had, a lot of issues came up. Since the committee ended, we do not have clarity on where those issues. We do not want NNPC to transit as it is to a limited liability company. There are a number of assets that have to be divested and shared. What are the transparency and accountability models adopted in the share and allocation of divestment of those assets? This is an issue for us. The other one is the issue of the regulations that are underpinning implementation of the PIA, which individual agencies are now drafting on their own and approving. We have concerns that you cannot just make a rule that that will also be obeyed by you. Those rules will be subjected to stakeholders' inputs, so that even the hard areas that agencies are avoiding could be attacked, because those hard areas are the areas actually that will be able to push the boundaries of reforms and implementation in terms of transparency and accountability. I will say that that one is a multi-stakeholders engagement on the PIA as we're doing. That's why this webinar is very important. Let us not succumb to the fact that the information is not filtering, information is not a way. So there need to be massive increasing public demands on these issues and advocacy on these issues, because it's an area of an economy that shapes our lives. We in Haiti are doing the best we can, but we can do more with much more civil society and the media and the partners' engagement to amplify our voices. So this is the issue. We are currently concluding our industrial report for the oil and solid minerals, and we will be releasing these reports in September, on the 24th of September. That's our plan. If our multi-stakeholders approve them. Today in Lagos, the oil and solid minerals validation of data is ongoing and will be concluded today. It's begun on Monday. So when our report comes out, some of the issues I've highlighted will also be clearly defined and backed with evidence and data. This is the major issue that we are dealing with. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
On the HSC, the host community development, I listened to one of our panelists who was making a point that it should be domiciled by the community. That's exactly the essence. But even at that, the community will also require some external independent, as provided in that law, independent, reputable individuals that will be able to look over their shoulders and monitor and make sure that external domestic forces within their region do not hijack the process, because that's what has happened in the previous. That's why the law provided that there are individuals to be chosen by the communities who should serve on the board. There are individuals who may not come from the community, that the community themselves knows that these people have enormous reputation and contacts to stand firm on their behalf. Those kind of people can be on their board, institutions and individuals within the country who may not necessarily come from those communities. The whole essence is to safeguard the ownership of this process by the host community to make sure that for the first time, projects that will be designed and implemented are the projects based on their needs. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Dr. Oji. Thank you very much for your response to those questions. You've actually touched on a number of other aspects. We're about rounding up now, and I just have one more question for Mr. Lola. It has to do with the role of sustainability reporting in communicating progress on adoption and implementation of the PIA, particularly for businesses, being able to communicate this to the stakeholders that are really interested in knowing what they're doing and getting information around it. Thank you, sir.
All right. Thank you very much to the person who asked that question. Sustainability reporting plays a critical role in communicating progress on the PIA by providing, like other speakers have so eloquently espoused, providing transparency, accountability in the implementation of the Act, right? So through detailed sustainability reporting, stakeholders, including government agencies, investors, local communities, and even the general public can assess how effectively the PIA's objectives are being met, particularly in areas such as environmental management, social responsibility, economic impact, and the likes. So generally speaking, by documenting and disclosing these activities, sustainability reporting can help to build trust, that we're saying is so deficit, demonstrate commitment to responsible practices and foster a more sustainable and inclusive energy sector, in Nigeria. So, and I'm happy to let businesses know that this is one of the strong suits that we have at CSR-in-Action, right? And we have developed the oil and gas sector's first IFRS, S1 and S2 compliant sustainability report this year. We have done the sustainability reporting for all the major companies in the oil and gas sector. I see some of our clients and our beneficiaries, here. Some of them you introduced earlier on, and even outside the oil and gas sector, in case somebody is listening to these subsequently. So, it's something that we can help businesses, to do. Apart from our advocacy subsidiary, we have a fully fledged consulting business that handhold companies and guide them through, the various stages of reporting. So finally, to answer the question directly, I think additionally, sustainability reporting would give you the opportunity to monitor subsequently, provide the framework for continuous improvement, enabling stakeholders to track progress over time. And then you can hold companies accountable for their commitments under the PIA. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Mr. Lola. I appreciate the words you've spoken because it just occurred to me as you were speaking that indeed our advocacy arm gave birth to the consulting arm, because we saw the need to more than just tell people you need to do this. We saw the need to show them how to do this and how to be in compliance, and that's what gave birth to essentially the consulting arm of CSR-in-Action. And it's a work that we do as part of our service to the national development of our dear nation and also the continent as a whole. So I can see we have more questions coming in, but we have a hard stop for this webinar for 12:10, and we are just about 6 minutes to go. So I'm going to humbly request all those who have sent in additional questions that these questions will be collated by our team internally, will be shared with the panelists so that the panelists can provide answers to them. And then we would, put some of this content and communication that would go out subsequently. So apologies that we would not be able to take all the questions. I think at this point, I would just allow for the remaining panelists to just give us closing remarks, just a very short sentence of, just what your final thoughts are. I'll call on Mr. Kibambo Ibidapo Obe, and then I'll call on Mrs. Gloria Alexander.
Thank you so much. Thank you once again, CSR in Action. This has been a very, very interesting panel and informative. I'll just take my remaining 30 seconds to speak a little bit about gender inclusivity, which CSR in Action has called a bias. I believe the PIA is an opportunity for us using the host community development trust to foster empowering women and women-owned businesses to become service providers to the industry. Over here at Rwanda, we are being very, very, very deliberate about increasing our supply chain and our suppliers to tilt more towards women-owned businesses. And if we can use this HCDT in coming up with the needs assessments to ensure that empowering women to have the proper training and maybe to support their businesses, we can go from local content being synonymous with low quality by empowering women and new business with the proper training using the funds available in HCDT to make local content not just local and national standard, but even world-class standard and the economy. So that's a big opportunity. And I think companies have to be deliberate in targeting women-owned businesses and also across the value chain, instituting training programs and supporting some of these industries to aspire to world-class standards. Thank you. Thank you for the opportunity and the time, everyone on the call.
Thank you very much, Mr. Bidapo Obe. Next, Mrs. Alexander Thomas. And after Mrs. Thomas, we would have Mrs. Eugenia also give us a closing remarks. But if Mrs. Thomas is unable to speak now, then I will just ask Mrs. Eugenia Onyeruka to please give us just in brief, for just a few seconds, closing thoughts as we wrap up the seminar, the webinar. All right. I believe that maybe Mrs. Onyeruka would come back to us, but nonetheless, I would ask Mr. Dayo Kusami for your closing words.
Thank you. Thank you to CSR in Action. I think, no, I know the way to push the needle forward is stakeholder engagement. It comes in forms like this. It brings ideas like Dr. Oji talking about the coordinated implementation committee and reports. This is something that I'll be taking into my legal advice with clients. It comes with things like CSR in Action, doing the research that enables us to see where there are gaps that need to be filled, because it's very good to talk about improving things, but you need empirical data to be able to do that. And you'll be able to bring people across where they can cross-fertilize ideas, and this cross-fertilization would help stakeholder engagement going forward. So for me, this has, even though I'm a panelist, this has been very educative for me as well. So Mecca, thank you for inviting me. Thank you to CSR for doing the research and, doing the good work. Also, good thanks to the Ford Foundation for sponsoring CSR's action, because you need people who are not directly vested, like myself. I'm a lawyer, or the regulators, people who are neutral parties that can help spot the gaps and help us fill it. So thank you, everyone. This has been educative for me as well. And, we keep on trucking.
Thank you very much, Mr. Kusami. Thank you very much. Dr. Oji, a final word from you after which we would ask our Chief Operating Officer, Mrs. Sonyolu, to give us
thank you very much. Just to thank once again the CSR-in-Action and my colleagues on the panel for the very insightful ideas and knowledge shared, and for the audience for their patience, and to apologize once again. I did have very great connection today, but I'm sure that this kind of interaction needs to be sustained, and I appeal to you that the reports of this webinar should be developed and shared, and lessons learned clearly highlighted. Because in Nigeria, we are very, very, very fond of organizing workshops, seminars, and conferences, and decisions taken are not well articulated and made. And when you come the following year, you are still repeating exactly what was done in the last year. You'll be wondering, what was the whole essence of last year's conference? What did it achieve? So this particular webinar should not go that way. We need to have a report that are structured and shared, and next steps, decisions taken and next steps clearly defined and shared with all of us that have participated. It will help us also within our agency to integrate this into what we are doing. We really thank you for this opportunity.
Thank you very much, Dr. Oji. Thank you very much for your kind words. This is Sonyolu. Please, you may proceed to give us the vote of thanks.
Thank you, Isaac. Thanks for a job well done. It's really been an insightful session for me, and I believe for everyone who has joined. I want to use this opportunity to, on behalf of CSR-in-Action, to appreciate everyone who has made today's webinar a great success. First and foremost, I'd like to express our deepest gratitude to the distinguished speakers, Mrs. Onyirika, Mrs. Alexander Thomas, Dr. Oji, Mr. Ukusami, Mr. Ibidapo Ube. It's been great hearing from you, enriching to get your unique and invaluable insights on this crucial topic. I would also like to thank our partners, our sponsors, our supporters, some of which are the Ford Foundation. Ford Foundation has been mentioned several times here. We want to thank Foster, Access Bank, Global Rights, and also our government partners represented by Dr. Oji, NATI, NNPC, the Ministry of Mines and Industry, and the Ministry of Petroleum Resources, to mention a few. We deeply appreciate your support and collaboration, and your commitment to advocacy and community development is highly commendable. We can't leave out our attendees, without whom we won't be here. We appreciate all attendees across all the platforms. Thank you for your active participation and for taking time out of your busy schedules to join us. Your questions and contributions during the Q&A session were thought-provoking and helped deepen our understanding of the subject matter. It is this kind of engagement that makes sessions like this enriching and meaningful. We also appreciate the media houses who have made our time to be present. Thank you very much for coming. But then we cannot but thank our very own Mecca Oluola, one of our directors, and our CEO, Bekeme Masade Oluola, fondly called Bimo, whose passion for CSR and sustainability is arguably unmatched. Thank you, Isaac, for your seasoned and well-coordinated moderation. It was a seamless session because of you. Last but not the least, we appreciate our organizers and the technical team whose hard work behind the scenes have ensured that everything ran smoothly. Your efforts have been instrumental in making this possible. So on that note, I'll say that as we conclude this seminar, I hope that everyone leaves with a better understanding of the Petroleum Industry Act and the strategies required to navigate the shift it brings. Let us all take forward what we have learned today to foster growth, innovation, and sustainability in the petroleum industry. Once again, thank you all for being part of this informative session. We look forward to your continued participation, engagement, and amplification. We welcome you. We look forward to having you at future events by CSR-in-Action. Thank you and have a wonderful day ahead.
Thank you so much, Mrs. Sanyolu. Thank you so much. I think you've made very important thought points already. So I will just proceed to announce the winner of the promo. My colleagues came to me and they've been observing, and we have a winner here for engagement in person of Tim Adiremi, who's joined us from Lagos, and he's described himself as a fan of CSR-in-Action. So, and then he's not winning this because he's a fan, but because we have seen his engagement over time. I'm seeing here cases where he summarized points from the conversation from speakers and just put it in the chat section for people who joined in to follow through. So once more, everyone here, thank you so much for making time to be a part of this webinar. This conversation does not end here. It will continue on the 22nd of October at Victoria Island, where we'll be having the 13th CITE conference, which is one of our flagship initiatives. That's the Sustainability in the Extractive Industries conference, and it will be happening live in Lagos, Victoria Island, and we would have some of the speakers that you've listened to and more come to advance these conversations around how we can truly build a sustainable, equitable, and more inclusive extractive sector for the benefit of our dear nation. Once more, thank you very much to everyone who's been a part of this. We really, really do value your time, including our panelists. And to speak to Dr. Orji's observation, the communique for this webinar will be promptly shared, as well as communication around it, which has even been going on as the webinar was in progress, but it will be promptly shared with all participants. And we look forward to seeing you in our future engagements, and also to continue this conversation. We will share some responses that we've collated down, some questions we've not been able to address, and we would escalate this to the panelists so we can get answers on some of them. And thank you to everyone who's thanking us for organizing this, and you're the reason why we're here, and we're very grateful. And we do wish you a very happy new month ahead and a very successful Ember month in advance. I do not know if we have any further words from the team, but without that, then it's good afternoon, everybody, and God bless.
Thank you. God bless. Bye.
Bye, everyone.
Happy new month ahead and a very successful Ember month in advance. I do not know if we have any further words from the team, but without that, then it's good afternoon, everybody, and God bless.
Thank you. God bless. Bye.
Bye, everyone.
Happy new month ahead and a very successful Ember month in advance. I do not know if we have any further words from the team, but without that, then it's good afternoon, everybody, and God bless.
Thank you. God bless. Bye.
Bye, everyone.
In the month ahead, and a very successful Ember month from the team. But without that, then it's good afternoon, everybody, and God bless.